But it's a lot of times we buy into the idea of what everyone else is telling us we have to do. This is what success looks like. And it's like, are you sure that's what you actually want? Before you go chase that dog, let's make sure that that's the dog you want to catch. And then if it is, okay, now we can teach you how to do that. There's people out there that have done it before. Y'all do things, I do things. There's a million people out there that can help you make that transition. But you first got to decide that that's actually the transition you want to make.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS, Sharpen the Spear podcast, with another incredible guest. I've got Scott Maderer with us. And the good thing about this one is I've been on Scott's podcast. We know each other, so we're that much more acquainted. That's why I know this is going to be spectacular, because I had the privilege to be on his. So with no further ado, Scott, as we always do on STS, no one knows Scott better than Scott. So Scott, little backstory, bring us up to speed, and we'll get into the conversation.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having me on. A little bit about me. So I've done a lot of different things in my life. I've run my own businesses. Basically, I started my first business when I was about 12 years old, doing a painting business, and actually doing it as a business. I hired my friends to actually do the painting while I went out and got jobs and bids and did all of that. Now I did painting too, but I hired them to do a lot of the labor. So then I worked for my dad, who was a small business owner. I went into education. I actually have a background in science, did medical research for a while, but figured out real quickly that that's not what I was going to do with the rest of my life. So I pivoted and became a school teacher. Loved that, did that for 16 years. Left that and went into the corporate world and worked myself up into senior leadership in an educational testing company, running a big team, flying all over the country, doing all the normal corporate stuff. And then eventually, my wife and I went through kind of a financial crisis of our own, had a lot of things. I was suicidal because of finances. We had a big change in our life that we had to reset our entire life and kind of do things differently. And through that, people started coming to me and saying, hey, y'all are weird. Y'all are doing stuff different. Can you help me? And so because of that, I started coaching other people, and eventually that turned into a business. That's now what I do full time. I've worked with clients in over 20 countries, 38 states, all over the world, do it from my home office and love what I do. Through all of that, I mentioned my wife, Carrie. She's been with me. We have an adult son named David. He's successfully left the house and is out on his own working and things. For some reason, he wanted to move to Dallas and be closer to his girlfriend when she was going to college up there than staying close to mom and dad. No clue why that would work. But that was kind of, he's up the road. He's not too far from us, about 3 or 4 hours from us. So we still get to see him. But we've successfully had one launch. So we're empty nesters, which is a different phase for our life.
That's great. Yeah, I've got that too. We've got 2 out, 2 of the 6 out, with others preparing for departure, So you know what they say, Scott? You've done it right when they just leave.
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're not holding on to you. They don't look at you do this. Yeah. My one son, literally, he goes, hey, I'm going to move out. And I'm like, okay, well, when you thinking? He goes, in the morning. And I went, and he's straight up in the morning. He had his stuff, he left it. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, stop by sometime. Say hi. So he moved about 40 minutes away, So it's just, kids are awesome. I love it.
It's good that he's out on his own. He's been working for H-E-B, a grocery chain that's down here for, I guess, about 7 years now. So he's doing well and kind of moving up and looking for opportunities to go into. I don't know that he's going to do that for the rest of his life, but he's continuing to kind of move up the ladder into more of a supervisor position and that kind of thing. And I have told him, those are skills that'll serve you well no matter what you do. If you end up running your own business, it'll serve you well. If you end up working in a company, it'll serve you well. Just go out there and do the job and learn the skills. And, it doesn't matter that it's H-E-B or somewhere else.
And, the other thing he's got going from 6 years at one place. Okay. That's rare. That is rare. So again, he's picking up the skills. He's in there going through the process and doing everything else. So that's a big, like my son in the Marine Corps, same thing. He's going, I go, you got, the world needs leaders. Go lead men. Like, go do that. Doesn't matter what you do. Now he's MSG, he's guarding embassies. He's it's a high level thing and all that stuff. But really it's that in that process, he'll be in for 6 years. Right. He's done other stuff. And it's showing people you can do that is really important, especially when you have to lead others or create a business.
His comment, my son is, he's like, why am I like, I'm a 20-year-old and I'm in here, telling these 35-year-olds to get to work. And he's like, why don't they just do what they need to do? And I'm like, well, because you have a work ethic, son.
That's right.
It's like we raised you to actually work, so you kind of know what that means. And not everyone has that attitude. So now you got to learn how to motivate them and how to engage them and all of those sorts of things. And yeah, he was challenged by it because he was the young pup. He was literally the youngest person working there, and he's in charge of a team. Everybody on that team is older than him. I'm like, well, figure it out. Let's talk about it. You can do it. Let's just talk about it.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, it's just, again, we have a real shortage of quality leadership. It's just
absolutely.
Because, and we could spend hours talking about the whys, but the reality is we need leaders. So if you have that inkling, like you think, hey, like a lot of people want to be in charge, they just don't do it well, or they don't have any experience. They don't want to learn how to lead.
Well,
right?
we teach people to be managers. We teach people to be technicians or have a skill. We teach people to be bosses. We really don't do a great job of educating people on how to be leaders. And I actually, I put all of those things in different categories. You know how to turn a wrench. You're a great plumber. That's a technician. And I'm just using that as an example. And it's not that technicians aren't needed, and it's not that they can't learn the other skills. It's that's not the same skill set as being a leader,
That's right.
And that's where a lot of them, go out and they start their own thing and they get themselves in trouble because it's like, oh, wait, I thought because I knew how to turn a wrench really well, I could do all this other stuff really well. And it's like, not if you don't learn how to do this other stuff. There's a skill there. You've got to learn it.
Yeah. I spent 20 years, my first business, 20 years of doing my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I'm the best at it. It's cool. I'm winning awards. I'm making money. I'm doing all this stuff, but I didn't know the business side. I just figure it's never going to end. This is beautiful. I'm just making a lot doing it like until 08, 09.
I'm just printing money. It's awesome.
It was great. Ask what do you need tomorrow? 10 grand? I'll go get you 10 grand, whatever you need, so that's that. That's where people have to get to that other side. Mm-hmm. That's what we do with people. We want to help them get and understand that and remove themselves. They have to put the wrench down.
Right.
If they want to leave this, it's just like, I know you're great at it and you probably like it a lot, but the less you do of it, the better you're going to be. Empower your talents, your skills to the next person so they can pick up the wrench and run. Right? That's what we want. We want them to be able to go and do this so that we can get more work so they can stay busy, make a great income, improve their skills in their technical aspects. And then we'll handle the other stuff. You have to be able to be willing to make that transition.
Well, it's even figuring out if that's the transition you want to make. I mean, I think sometimes we stand it up and we're like, well, this is the only way to, quote, be successful. And it's like, why is that true? Let's step back and figure out what is success for you. Because I think you could work for somebody else and be perfectly happy and perfectly successful and doing what you need to be doing. You can run your own thing and be perfectly happy, perfectly successful. But it's a lot of times we buy into the idea of what everyone else is telling us we have to do. This is what success looks like. And it's like, are you sure that's what you actually want? Before you go chase that dog, let's make sure that that's the dog you want to catch. And then if it is, okay, now we can teach you how to do that. There's people out there that have done it before. Y'all do things, I do things. There's a million people out there that can help you make that transition. But you first got to decide that that's actually the transition you want to make. Because I've seen so many people start doing it. They catch the thing and they're like, this isn't actually what I wanted to catch. And it's like, well, yeah,
Yeah. I think there's a great book, and you've probably read it, Robert Kiyosaki, Cashflow Quadrant.
Mm-hmm.
That, what I loved about that book? So for the people who don't know, you just picture the 4 boxes, right? The quadrant. You've got employed, Then below that, you have self-employed. And then over and up on the right, you have business owner. And then you have underneath that investor, the I, right? That's what you have. And here's the beauty. All three of them, you can make a lot of money. Or all four of them, rather. You can make a lot of money. And to your point, I won't go into all the detail of the book. I highly recommend people read it. It really gives them like an understanding, because there's people who work for others and they make 7 figures a year.
And they do fantastic.
And they do great, right? And they're not running the business. And there's people who are self-employed, right? Literally might just be them, right? Or they have one person and they're doing that. Okay, great. And they make, multiple 6 figures or whatever they do. They do a really good living. They're content, right? And they're not overstressed. And then there's the business owner. Okay, he runs a business. Other people are doing the work. He's there overseeing all that, right? And then the I is the investor. That's the money investing in the business owner, right? So that they can do their thing, right? So you look at it and go, well, I'd like to be the investor. I like my money making money. Well, obviously, but not everyone fits that, right? And just having the understanding that you can make money wherever you're at, but you got to focus on what you do. You got to become great at what you do, whatever that level is. If that's ownership, so be it. If it's an employee or self-employed, you take that approach, and you got to be all in.
Well, and it's stepping back and looking at the pros and cons, because each of them have advantages, and none of them are pure good, none of them are pure bad. They all have trade-offs. They all have decisions you have to make, and so it's kind of deciding which of these sets of pros and cons actually align with my calling, my purpose, my desires, what I want from the rest of my life, because hopefully work is not the only focus in your life. Even making money is not the only focus in your life. There's other things, relationships and other things that are priorities as well. One of the things that I try to tell people is like changing your language around being busy, because especially around the workplace, we hold busy as a badge of honor. People walk up to somebody, how you doing? Oh, I'm busy. That's almost becomes like this. That's a success marker. And it's like, actually, no, busy doesn't mean anything. If I took you and I said, hey, bud, I want to hire you for $100 a day, and I'm going to have you go in my backyard, and there's a pile of rocks on the left-hand side of my backyard. You pick up a rock, you walk it over to the right-hand side of my backyard, you put it in a pile, and you do that all day long. And when you run out of rocks, you just pick them up from the right-hand side and bring them back to the left-hand side. That's what you do. And it's $100 a day. You good? And, I will guarantee you, there may be some people that take me up on that, but at some point they're quitting.
Yeah.
Because they're busy, but they're not doing anything that has any value. And so at the end of the day, at some point, $100 is not enough. $1,000 is not enough.
And you're going to sit there looking, going, why am I paying this guy to do nothing?
Right.
That's really what's going to happen.
Well, and that's my side, but even for them,
right.
there's
I get it. Yeah.
That's why it comes down. It's not about being busy. It's not about, making money even. It's about doing the things that matter. And money is a side effect of that. Money is a reward for that. I always tell people dollars are certificates of appreciation, right? I've given them something of value. They appreciate the value I'm giving them. They give me money in exchange. It's like, hey, I appreciate the value you've given me. And obviously, we love the idea of over deliver. We under promise, over deliver, all of those things, give them even more than they actually quote paid for. So they walk away going, man, I want this guy to come back and work for me again. And again, that works on the employee side. If I'm an employee, I should be over delivering. If I'm the boss, I should be over delivering. If I'm the leader, I should be over delivering. If I'm running the company, we should be over delivering. So it always comes down to that idea. And that's when you start stepping back and going, hey, I'm going to be productive. And so like one of the things I tell business owners is stop saying I don't have time for that and just start saying that's not a priority for me. And the funny thing is, all of a sudden you'll make different decisions. Because if you're sitting there at work and you're like, I don't have time to go to my daughter's dance recital tonight. Everyone else is like, oh man, I understand. You're just so busy. They almost commensurate with you and are like, yeah, I get it. Oh, how hard it is to you. But if you say out loud to like your friends or your wife or your coworker, hey, you know what? It's not a priority for me to go to my daughter's dance recital. They're going to look at you and be like, really, dude? And you yourself are going to think about it different. You're going to look at it and go, wait a minute. Really? That's not a priority? No, that should be a priority. How can I now structure my life so that I can do that thing, which is a priority, and not have this other stuff get in the way and still be successful, be happy, do all of those other things. And the truth is you can do that, but you have to be intentional about it. You have to be purposeful about it.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. It's really good when you flip things like that for people because it's an interrupt.
Mhm.
Just you what? You know,
Yeah, that's
then
not
you
a
start
priority,
saying,
feels totally different.
and then you could just say, well, how many games or how many recitals have you missed of your
Mhm.
kids? Oh, a lot. Why? Do you have to be here at 6:30 at night, or can you get more stuff done, the right stuff done during the day? We would take them through, you know, outline everything you do, your activity planner. What are you doing? I said, we call it, you have anchor activities or you have all intentional work. Like we don't have empty spaces in the calendar, in the day planner, right? It's like everything has to be accounted for. And when you account for every hour of your day, like even if I'm making it for someone else on the team, I don't give them this gap. Like, oh, this is so they can catch up with this, catch up with that. No, they don't have free time. Like there's something that has to be done productively within the day and the week and that kind of thing. You have your outcomes, what are we looking for, the expectations. And like you're saying, when you put people into that, because salary.com did this huge survey, they found that the average time wasted per day per employee is 2 hours.
Mhm.
Wasted, totally unproductive, whether it's phones or whatever they're doing, smoke break, whatever it is. That you got 5 people, 10 people, you got 5 people, that's 10 hours a day. That's 50 hours a week. That's a whole nother payroll.
Mhm.
Okay. Like you start looking at that and that's the average. That means some people are wasting even more and some are less. Right. But you start to understand, then you look at yourself as an owner, you go, what am I really doing with my,
And you're probably wasting at least that much too.
yeah, I'm probably worse than my own people. Yeah. When you look at it, you're like, and believe me, Scott, I always go back because I teach you, I want you to focus on the 5% of the business only you can do. So that's all you focus on. Like everything else should be handled, right? Systemized, process, all that stuff.
Well,
It,
yeah,
yeah,
delegate,
exactly.
dump,
All the stuff that
defer,
we could
all of
get
those things.
into.
Yeah.
But it's like when you understand that, and I had a mentor, his name was Bedros Koulian. So he owned Fit Body Boot Camp, super successful guy. He was talking one day and he's like, someone's at his house and he goes, well, they asked, well, your clock stopped. He goes, yeah. Well, he goes, well, why don't you just put new batteries? And he goes, that's not my 5%. He literally like telling the guy, like, I don't do that.
Mhm.
That's a waste of my time. I'm like, okay, you're really dialed in. And he's super productive. I mean,
Right.
he achieves incredible things, but that's a discipline in and of itself,
Absolutely.
but you train yourself to do that.
Well, and it also comes down into, recognizing how do you build buffer and these sorts of things. And so like using that example of, accounting for every hour, it doesn't mean that you don't have time that's in there that's just thinking time or white space time or even time to take care of that unplanned work, but again, like I actually have time on my calendar that I block off for what I call UPW, which is unplanned work. It's the email that comes in from the client during the day. It's my buffer time to work through that stuff so that it doesn't pile up on me. And by the way, if I don't use all of that time for dealing with those things, I have other things that are like, okay, but this is important and I haven't been able to I'm going to put that in that slot and go ahead and get it done. So it's not wasted time or time for me to just sit around twiddling my thumbs and figuring out what I should do. It's productive time, but it's also buffer time. I have time on my calendar for planning. I have time on my calendar for reviewing things and building new systems or new processes. But it's not, it's because so often when we hear, quote, plan every minute, we're like, oh, that means every minute is full of meetings and these. No, not necessarily. Planning time is a valuable thing to put on your calendar. And most of us lose track of that and we end up not doing it. And then you end up in that business where all you're doing all day long is playing whack-a-mole, running from fire to fire, emergency to emergency. And that's not actually going to be successful. At some point that
Right.
collapses.
Exactly.
You can keep that up for spin those plates for a long time, but at some point it's like, I'm dropping a plate, it's going to happen.
Yeah, we do that a lot with the tactical. So the tactical
Yeah.
is those little fires that flare up every day, right? You got someone runs in your office, you got a problem. Okay, you can go out as the owner and you can put it out because you're great at that. Okay,
But
you're
is
a
that
problem solver.
really what
But
you want to do long term?
but what did you just do? You give them permission to come back in next time they have a problem and come in and get you to put it out. How about why did this start? Why did this fire flare up? Why did this problem happen? It's 3 steps backwards. Someone didn't do this, this, or this, and then this happened. So we're going to create a system that handles that, this, and this.
Hmm.
And now this isn't going to happen again. Well, you're only going to have so many fires. Pretty soon you got everything systemized. Even if you take it one at a time, let's think about this. And like you said, I build that too. I have floating time throughout the day, that unplanned work. That isn't 7 to 8.
No.
That's when it comes up, right? And you have permission to utilize that time to do that stuff. So you're exactly right. I think if people don't, and I see this in businesses all the time, is they only, again, they address the tactical when it happens, but they never fix the tactical.
Right. Right.
So it doesn't occur. And
That's the whack-a-mole. I'm just whacking moles all day long.
yeah. So you gotta take that approach. And it's just one thing at a time. You don't have to go fix everything.
No.
What's every problem we had? Let's start on, no, what came up today? Okay, let's do it. And it's like doing an after action.
Or another
report.
frame that I've actually said, what comes up most often? Because that's another one. If you've got something that every day it's taken an hour of your time and you could fix that, now you got 5 hours a week, you've got, or whatever it is. Right. And it's like what comes up most often, a lot of times it's a great place to start. Because that thing that you're only spending 10 minutes a day, that's all you spend, 10 minutes a day, but you do that 365 days out of the year. Well, if you can get rid of that thing, that's huge amounts of time,
Huge.
even though 10 minutes, but we look at that and we're like, well, but it's only 10 minutes.
Pound
Yeah. But it's compounding.
Yeah. Right.
Right. Something that only takes you 10 minutes once a month. Okay. Maybe that's not the most important thing to fix, because
Right.
I can spare 10 minutes once a month for a while. I'll get to it eventually, but that may not be the first thing I fix.
Yeah, it's I see that a lot. It really is that, what's really a priority? What's an income producer? Where's my place in this? I have a client, they do custom woodworking, right? So vanities, all this stuff. Well, if a saw goes down, you know what everyone does? They just sit there and look at it. And they'll come as office say the saw is down. And I'm like, and this kept happening. I'm like, what? Okay, I'll fix it. Let me fix it permanently for you. Okay, now you're, 800 miles away from me, but I'm going to do it right here. Okay, give me a list. I'm like, what's the troubleshooting? What is it? What do you do? Give me each step. What do you do when you go fix it? And he goes, I call here and this number. And you just call the company. They walk you right through it. And they'll have you send a picture and they'll get it up and running in minutes. I'm like, why isn't that laminated on the machine? And we did that. And guess what? They never came in his office again when the saw broke. Okay, they just call and get it fixed. I said, you don't come to me unless you've done all this and the company tells you you're screwed. Okay, if you need a new machine.
If you've done all of this and it's still not running, okay, now we need to talk.
Exactly. And that's the game changer, because his whole day was guys just coming in. I go, you allow this.
Yeah.
But you allow it. That's what you have. That's what
not
you
only that, you've enabled it. You've created it.
That's it. It's leadership time. This is leadership time. You're going to fix this, show them how do not come to me. I will have your head. Okay. If you walk in my office and you haven't done this, bad things are going to happen. Okay.
Right. Well, have you ever read the article? It's an old Harvard Business Review article called Where's the Monkey?
I have. Yeah, that's
okay.
interesting.
So there's a great article for folks. If you haven't read it and you're in any sort of leadership position, you need to go find it and read it. And you find it online. The basic concept of it is, imagine for a minute, you're walking down the hall and your employee comes up to you and they're like, I've got a problem. And they tell you what the problem is, and you say, oh, I need to solve that problem. So let me take the problem. I'm going to go solve it for you. He says, what you want to imagine in your head is that when the employee comes walking down the hall, they've got a gorilla sitting on their back or a monkey sitting on their back. And when you say, let me look into that, that monkey climbs off of their back and onto your back. And he's like, the question to ask is that actually where that monkey belongs? Because sometimes the monkey does belong to you as the leader or the manager. It is a big enough problem that it's like, okay, I need to be the one that takes ownership of this problem and fixes it. Other times it's like, dude, keep your monkey. I don't need the monkey. You need the monkey. You need to go fix that problem. The saw is a great example of that. By creating that laminated sheet, the monkey stayed with those people
Yes.
until eventually, if it does, no, the saw is really broken this time. We need to go buy a new saw. Okay, now it's my problem as the owner. I need to own that. I need to figure out how to buy a new saw, how to replace the saw, whatever. How do we get back up and running as quick as possible? But all of these other steps, dude, you own those steps. I don't own those steps as the boss. I don't need to be involved in doing the troubleshooting and figuring out, is the saw really just broken to the level that we need to buy a new saw? You need to come to me when it's gotten to that level. And so it is a way, a mental picture. So I actually when I had a team of leaders that was working for me, I gave them all a little stuffed monkey to put on their desk.
Yes, I love.
And that was the memory cue. I'd glance over at the monkey and go, wait a minute, is this my monkey or is this their monkey? And sometimes it's their monkey.
My kids have, they got the long arms, they got Velcro on the hands,
Uh-huh.
and you can wrap them around. That's what you need. And you just go put it around their neck and Velcro that, go, see you later. Okay. That's
Go take care of your monkey. That's your monkey.
I love it. I have some really good friends, really, 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 high level entrepreneurs. And they taught me a thing called the 3 S's, as in Sierra. It's when there's a problem. Okay. He said, I need 3 things. The first S is the situation. What's the situation? The next thing is, what are the solutions? Like, give me some solutions. Then the third S is your suggestion of what solution you'd use. If you either email that or you walk in with that, and you've already decided that, and you'll say, I think solution B is it. It's like, okay, that's not bad, but what's going to happen with that is this. So probably C is probably your best thing. But man, you're almost there. Now they know forever, right? So now and I love it because you're creating problem solvers. That's what that does. They have to go through an exercise before they can come in. Same thing with the laminated sheet. Mm-hmm. Get on there and go through all these steps and everything else. If leaders will get that mindset, owners especially, like, you need to train your people. We have kids. I have to train my kids. Let me teach you how to do this correctly. And that's why my kids are the best employees everywhere they work, because we've trained them to do things. They
train them to solve problems already.
They're critical thinkers. They get what's going on, right? So you have to do the same thing with your workforce, right? In a lot of different ways.
One of the other things I did that when I was a leader of teams is I basically had a rule that you could come in and I would ask when you came in, I'm like, is this problem solving or is this venting? Because sometimes, as a person, I just need to vent. I just need to get something off my chest. So if they would come in and say, well, it's venting, it's like, okay. I kind of look at my watch, vent. And the rule was they could unload, they could talk about all the bad stuff, they could just get it off their chest. But here was the rule. If you start repeating yourself, now you're not venting, you're whining. And we don't whine. And I literally would stop them and go, okay, now you're repeating yourself. We're moving to whining. We're not going to whine. So either we're done venting or we need to change this to be a solution conversation, and now we're going to have a different conversation. Which do you want? And a lot of times they'd be like, no, you're right, I'm done venting. And they'd walk out of the office. And it's like, all right, that took a minute and a half. It got them back on track. They're off doing the thing that they need to do. And they got it off their chest. So they're not sitting there, just marinating in this kind of bad thinking. And it's like, okay, that's fine. People need to do that. Other times they'd look at me at the end and they'd be like, no, we need to move this to a solution conversation. Okay. Then again, it's back to what you said. You've already described the situation because that was part of the venting. What solutions do you see? What do you think we should do? And we'd ask those questions because a lot of times, again, until they vented, sometimes on their own, they couldn't do the next 2 steps. They needed some support to do those next 2 steps. Now, eventually over time, they got to the point where, they'd come in and it's like, okay, here's the situation. Here's what I think here's the possible 3 solutions I see. Here's what I think we should do. And, 90% of the time it's like, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
Eventually they get to the point where it's like, yeah. And it's that, what does that take? That takes 8 seconds, 40 seconds, whatever it is, a minute and a half, depends on how complicated the situation is and the solutions are. And you're done and they're off and running. And of course, eventually, right, you get them to the point where they're empowered. They don't even come into your office.
Right.
They've done those steps.
Yeah.
It's
they're
like,
good
great.
at it. They understand.
And
they
they're good at it.
They can analyze the outcome of each solution. They can look a little further than the right now. They start to see it. Okay. Now I had I had an uncle. He was a mechanic. He used to work for my dad on the golf course, right? So you're fixing mowers and you're out mowing greens in the morning. You got to get that done, right? You're out there early. You guys are going to golf. You know, want to tee off early. He was, he was like MacGyver. Okay. Everything he could take the chewing wrapper thing and the metal and put it between two things and get you back out there, right? I'm like, okay, he'd always get you back out there to finish, but he never fixed it permanently. I'm like, it just keeps breaking. Dude, fix it. I mean, we use it for 2 hours in the morning. It sits here for the other 6 while you're like, and so it was always, and I'm like this young kid. I'm like, I'm working on the golf course when I was like 6. Okay. So I'm like 10, 11 years old. I'm like, I'm looking like, and I keep asking, Dad, why doesn't he fix it like for good? He goes, I can't, my dad would just throw his hands up because, you know, he's a relative, you know, working on, finally get rid of him. But I just, that temporary fix, it's a skill. You got to get the job done. But if you don't do the permanent fix, that's the problem we're talking about.
Well, and that's where a lot of times as a leader that you're blind to those things because again, sometimes it's a problem that your team is out there fixing things because they're not escalating, you know, the
Right.
thing. So it is, that's that balancing act of, yeah, you want them to be empowered and you want them to solve the problem and you want them to get the grass cut, you know, in this case. But then you also want to be informed enough about what's going on and paying enough attention that you can figure out you know what? If we'd invest a couple of extra hours today, we're going to go back to gaining those hours back, you know, and that's why leadership is it's why it's so hard. You know, it's a science and it's an art. You've got to do that dance of focusing on your attention, your priorities, your values. What are those things? And honestly, that's the step that I think so often we miss is that stepping back and looking at ourselves as the leader and doing that development, you know, that's really what transitions from being a manager or a boss. You know, manager gets the grass cut. The boss yells at the person for not cutting the grass, you know, and the grass gets cut. The leader goes, you know, what's the most efficient way to keep the grass cut and not waste all this other time so we can do it in the most effective, the most efficient, the most productive way and really, you know, keep the business running. And that's a really different mindset. That's a different thing. And again, like I said, I don't think we train it in this country very well at all.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot from my father, right? Just a great worker, but he ran golf courses, right? They maintain golf course, all this stuff. So people, you know, they take out whatever, a 7-gang or a 9-gang mower, right? So they got all the reels behind that. They're going to do the fairways up one side, down the other, that kind of thing, you know, whatever in the rough.
Quick and efficient.
So,
get it all
my
done.
dad's like, well, that's not efficient. Let me put 3 of those out there. They're going to be staggered. It's going to go up and come down, go to the next one. So what used to take 6, 7 hours, he got done in like an hour. Like they're done with that, on to the next thing. I mean, he was the most efficient guy when it came to like what he could get done was unbelievable, you know, because he'd think.
Yeah, and that's again, that's stepping back and going, hey, just because we've always done it this way,
that's right.
Is that really the best way to do it?
That's right. That's right. Exactly that. And it's really, so obviously I learned a lot from him, you know, and the way you look at things. You know, I always looked at it like, well, how can it be better? Well, you know, because most people are going to do whatever they're told and they'll do it forever.
Yeah, right.
Because that's what someone taught them and that's how they do it. I'm like, well, it never has to be that way. I always wash dishes this way. Well, you don't have to. You can do it.
We've always done it that way is one of those, you know, it's a deadly phrase. And again, but it's a natural phrase because it works. And it works. You know, it was efficient to do it the way they were doing it. It just could be even more efficient if we do it this way, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, Scott, because there's advances in technology.
Right. Things change.
Everything else. So it's like as a leader, as an owner, you have to stay out front that way. You really need to be out exploring, and I'll put that in your 5%. You need to be going to the trade shows. You need to be seeing what's out there because you're the one who's going to go, this could really help. I wonder if this could work. Now, I'm going to give a little caveat. I'll give you a real world example. So a guy invests in a company, and he's going to start this up, and he's got a big contract with Costco and stuff like that to produce this food product has to be frozen and everything else. Well, he gets this factory that's not automated. So he's going to go to a trade show. We'll call him the investor CEO. Okay. And they'll tell him everything that he thinks he needs to hear about and he buys all the stuff. And he comes and he puts everything in, starts producing. 50% what's coming out has to be thrown away because he automated, because he didn't really know what he was doing. He listened to some salesman who wants to sell him the thing. So now he had to bring in a consultant, do all this. Now he's out trying to he's about to lose. You don't want to lose an account with Costco. I assure you. Okay. You don't want to do that. Okay. When it's your big customer. So, he literally brought in 30 people to do everything by hand. Okay. Just to keep the process going.
Just to keep it running.
But there you go, where you're not familiar with what it is. You're not really getting, well, this applied to exactly what I have. So it's complicated is what I'm saying.
And that's where a lot of times too, it's the throwing everything out and starting over kind of mentality, as opposed to the, what's the small thing I can do, or maybe even I can do it in a small scale, or how do I test things? I have a science background. I love running experiments, because here's the thing, running an experiment, you don't fail no matter what. Just get data, just get information. But a lot of times we have this all in mentality, right? We got to go all in at the poker table. And it's like, that works in a James Bond movie. Doesn't necessarily always work well. If it works, great, but it could be fatal. If it doesn't work, you've just closed your business permanently. So it's those balancing acts of thinking about things. So I always think about things in terms of reversibility and then impact, right? So reversibility is, how easy is it to undo the decision? And impact is, if I get the decision wrong, is this a fatal impact, or is this just a minor inconvenience? Where does it fall on that kind of scale of impact? Because if it's something that's very high impact and very low reversible, I really want to make sure this is the right decision before I do it. I want to put a lot of time and effort and planning and energy, and I'm going to do a lot of work to make sure it's going to be good. If, on the other hand, it's a decision that's easily reversed and very low impact, dude, flip a coin.
Yeah.
Don't spend a lot of time and energy on this. Just get it moving, and you can adjust as you go. And then, of course, there's the in between, right? If it's low impact but hard to reverse, or easy to reverse but high impact, that's in the middle, right? We've got to figure out more there than just the low impact, easy to reverse. But at the same time, it's not nearly as much as when they're both high. They're both high impact and hard to reverse. I
love that. That is two really simple things that have great impact.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of them's impact, but it's like, really, what is, if you take that approach to just about everything, that really simplifies it. And that's a teachable thing. Oh, those two things are like, and you drive that home with everyone who's in any position to initiate a change or request a change, or maybe they see something they can change. Like, that's the filter they can put it through. What does that look like? That's really brilliant. That's really, really, did you think of that yourself?
It helps you figure out, what is the decision-making time that I need to spend on this thing,
Yeah.
Because again, if it's high impact and low reversibility, dude, you better think about this before you do it, because it's, I kind of tell people that's the getting married decision. That's the having a baby decision. They don't take the kids back at the hospital. That's hard to reverse.
Well, let's talk about this then, because this is a really thing. Let's talk about decision making for a moment. Mm-hmm. Okay. I've seen I make decisions relatively quickly. Okay. That's just how I am. I see stuff. Well, let's do it. I'll work through it or whatever. But I've also been on the other side, and I'm talking high level. You talk about high impact things where they cannot make a decision. Mm-hmm. They need more consultation. They need to talk to this person, need to talk to that person. And I'll give you another real world example. You've got a line in your plant that's not running, or like 5 lines, you only have 1, and each line produces $20 million worth of product. And you're just sitting there looking at it. And someone's come in and give you here's the solution, and you still can't make a decision if you should do it. Meanwhile, Walmart's in complaining, where's my stuff? Okay. Mm-hmm. And Sam's going to be like, I don't think you want Walmart showing up to your company saying, where's my stuff? Okay. You're probably, it's worth $20 million to you, and you're not addressing this, right? So I think I want to talk a little bit about the decision-making process. There's a lot of different levels and applications, and needs and what decisions are. So kind of, if we can hit on that a little bit, Scott, I think that'd be really useful for people because I see this dragging people down in a big way.
So one of the things that I actually teach is DISC, as a personality assessment. And for those of you that aren't familiar, I'll give you a real quick overview. So DISC is just, the reason I like it is not because it's the best thing in the world. It's not because it's the only thing in the world. It's simply because it's simple enough that I can understand it and apply it in the real world. And that's what I want. I want something that I can use in the real world. I don't want something that's in theory. And so the idea is that there's two kind of axes or frameworks, right? One of them is that some people are more outgoing and some people are more reserved. And so outgoing is, don't think of that as extrovert and introvert. Think of outgoing as kind of, these are the high energy people. These are folks that, they get up in the morning, they just go, 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 go all day long. Okay. My guess is you would fall into that category.
I think so.
Reserved, on the other hand, these are the folks that are a little slower. They take their time. They're a little calmer. They talk quieter. They move slower. They take longer to make a decision, right? So this is kind of outgoing and reserved. And then the other axis is on the left-hand side is people who are more task-oriented, and on the right-hand side is people who are more people-oriented. And again, I don't want to hear any of these don't have a value judgment. They just they're just how you're wired, right? So task-oriented people tend to think about what needs to get done. And people-oriented people normally think about who needs to be involved, right? Who needs to be kind of getting it done. So they still can both be getting things done. They just think about it through a different frame. So task-oriented people are kind of, again, they're the ones that they like to have the results. They like to make lists. They like to get, this is it. This is the process. This is how we do it. And people-oriented people are much more likely to have the people conversations. Let's bring the people together in the room. Let's brainstorm through this, and then we'll get it done. And again, both of those work. They just work differently. And so if you think about those, the D is a outgoing, task-oriented person. Okay, they stand for dominant. They tend to be focused on results. My guess is you would score high in that component. Okay?
How would you ever know that?
I don't know. Yeah, just lucky guess. And honestly, I'm listening to your language and how you talk, and that's how I'm figuring it out, right? Guys are outgoing and people-oriented. Okay, so they're called inspirational folks. These folks are they're the ones that if they're at an event and they go, hey, we need a volunteer to come up on stage, they're already on the stage. It's like, they're running up there. They like to be the center of attention. They like to be out there and engaged with people. And they like talking about themselves, not in a selfish way. It's just that's who they are. They talk about people. And then S's are the supporters. So these are going to be reserved, people-oriented people. So I'm kind of going around the quadrant, clockwise. S's, the supporters. By the way, this is the most common personality type, is the S. So if you have to guess, start on the right with people-oriented language and move to the left, because S's and I's outnumber D's and C's, which is going to be the last category, by quite a bit. And S's they're the nicest people on the planet. They're interested in the status quo. They're interested in calmness. They're interested in, they don't like conflict. But they're also they're folks that kind of are the glue that holds everything together too. And then C, that last type, that's going to be reserved and task-oriented. These are your process people. These are if you give them a checklist and it's ordered 1, 2, 3, 4, they're going to do step 1, and then they're going to do step 2, and then they're going to do step 3. Because you put them in order, there must be a reason I'm going to do it in that order. Even, by the way, if the order was completely arbitrary and random, doesn't matter. They're going to start with number 1 and go to number 4. They're the people that are really interested in getting things right. They're the perfectionist, okay? And by the way, that also means that they're one of the slowest decision-making types.
Right.
So the first thing is to be aware of your own type, okay? Because if you're the D, your strength is you make fast decisions. Your weakness is you make fast decisions, because it can be both things. It can be a strength, it can be a weakness, depending on what situation you're in. And if you're a C, you need to understand that you're going to be making slow decisions. You always want more information. You never feel like you know enough information, okay? I always want to know why. I always want to think through the impacts. If you're an I, you're also going to make quick decisions. But by the way, your decisions aren't driven by results. Your decisions are kind of driven by fun or energy. You want to make the decision that gets things moving, not necessarily that gets a good result. Okay. And so there's a different impact there. Your S's are also going to be slow decision makers, and they're going to be interested in fairness and rightness. They want to make sure everyone's taken care of. Okay. So the way they're judging isn't based on information. It's based on kind of the care behind it. Okay. So first is being aware of yourself, because if you're, and by the way, most people are a blend. They're not purely one. Okay. They're more than one. So like I'm a high DC, I'm kind of over on the left-hand quadrant, which means when I think about people impacts, that doesn't come naturally to me. So being aware of that means I can do a couple of things. One, I can shore up my weakness, and I can kind of, think through those things, and I make sure I have somebody on my team that can speak to that, or I deliberately go out and seek information about that. But number two, I'm also aware of my strengths, and I can play to those. I can build a team that gets me the information that I need so that I can make a quick decision that gets good results, and I can kind of get into that balance of done rather than perfect. Right. But I have to fight against my perfectionist tendencies, because I have that high C component where I want to get everything right. So I have to kind of balance that. So as a leader, you need to kind of know where you fit, but then you also need to be aware of your team and their needs, because now all of a sudden you can start, because otherwise it's like this. If you're a D as a leader and you're out there talking results and get things done, and 80% of your team is I's and S's, you're standing at the front of the line yelling at them in German, and they only speak French.
Right.
And they literally do not understand what you are saying,
Right.
because you're not speaking their language. You're speaking a foreign tongue. And so learning to be able to communicate and kind of bring over, and I know it may feel like I've gone afield from decision making, but the reason this comes back to decision making is that's what gives you the data and the team and the information to be able to make that high impact decision and have everyone be on board and everyone moving forward. Because again, take that leader that you're talking about. If they're an S leader, they don't want to make the decision because they're afraid there's a negative impact on the team. If they're a C leader, they don't want to make the decision because they feel like they don't have enough information. If they're a D leader, they've slowed down on the decision because they're afraid of the results or the impact on the results. If they're an I, they feel like, it's going to waste energy and time in some way. It's going to not be, this isn't fun. This is work. I don't want to do this. And so there's a reason for all four types. They can get into that analysis paralysis kind of phase. Stereotypically, it's the C's that do that. But honestly, D's and I's and S's can do it too in the right setting with the right framework. And so being aware of that lets you step back and go, okay, how do I need the information to come to me so that I can make that high impact decision in a quick way that gets me the best results, that is actually the right decision, that takes care of the team, and that gets things moving in a high energy. How can I take care of all four of these quadrants, and take care of myself too as the leader to make that decision? But so many of us aren't aware of the fact that there's different decision-making, wirings. And so you're blind to it. If you're blind to it, well, you're always going to get stuck in that analysis paralysis because you're not getting the information fed to you the right way.
Yeah, that's so good. That was excellent explanation. I haven't heard it in that round of a scope. So that's really good. So it is this, like me, take me as a D. I'm like, I make decisions quickly. To me, that's a natural
and you
thing.
don't care. You'll change them in a heartbeat.
Right. And why doesn't everybody else do that? That's always my thought. What's wrong with you? But I also know that I travel, and I learned this analogy. I'm in a Ferrari going 140 miles an hour. You may be in a Honda and you want to talk to me and I got to slow down to 40. I'm not really into that. Okay.
That doesn't feel right or comfortable to you.
There's something wrong with this, right? So, but you have to understand that person at the 40 miles an hour, they're there for a reason, and it's the right reason. They're in the right place in the company to do that, but you might want to correct the ability to communicate and everything else. So you got to learn, like, hey, I got to slow down for this person.
I need to speak their language.
Right. Yeah. That's the quality leadership.
Well, and
that's
again,
understand you can shift gears.
So given a real world example, when I was in a leadership position, right, I've got a team of about 180 people that report up through me. There were leaders below me, but then those leaders reported to me and I'm responsible for the whole team. And I literally figured out who on this team of 180 people were my S's. Okay. And I divided them into groups. I had 3 of them on every Wednesday. I had an hour block that popped up and it gave me 3 names. And my job, I left my office. I walked to their little cubicle. I had my notebook with notes in it. Okay. Because I wrote this stuff down. And I'd walk up, hey, Richard, how are you doing today, man? How was the baseball game for your kid last week? How was, dude, this does not come natural to me at all. Okay.
You're a way better man than I am. I'm
thinking to myself, there's so much better ways that I can spend. But you know what? If I said, there's hell, here's some water guns, let's go put it out, they would, yep, let's go. Okay, we're taking care of it. They would walk through. If I needed someone to stay late, you want to know what? They would stay late. If I needed someone to get the job done, they'd get the job done because they understood. And by the way, they knew that this was a process. They knew I had a notebook. They knew they popped up on the list. They looked forward to their Wednesday, and because I valued them and I valued the fact that they needed that 10 or 15 minutes. It wasn't really that long. Again, I visited 3 people in an hour, and it wasn't, but it was 10 or 15 minutes of, hey, I care about you. I know you need this connection and we're going to talk about this stuff. And then I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to get work done. By doing that, I valued them. They felt valued. They felt cared for. And again, they would do anything. And I wasn't doing it in a manipulative way. It's not, I was doing it because they would then do anything for me. I was doing it because they needed it, but at the end result was they would do anything for me.
Yeah, I think, Scott, the interesting thing when you say, I've got my notebook, they know I got a notebook and everything else. Here's why that works. You're actually putting effort into it. They can visually see the effort you're making to do that. And that probably means more than you coming up and being just a chatty Cathy.
Yeah.
Right. You just come up like, man, I'm really working through this, man. Like that, there's actually probably
and they
more...
knew it didn't come natural to me. You know what I mean? They knew that's not how I was wired.
Right. And they knew there's the higher level of caring because you're actually taking the time to do that. So that's really good.
And
that's
by the way,
stuff.
You'll notice, because some people heard that and went, well, but your eyes are people too. Why didn't you go visit your eyes? Dude, they came to my office. Okay. Right. I did not need to seek them out. Okay. They were the ones that I had to teach. Look, if the office door is closed, I'm doing deep work. Unless it's an emergency, don't knock on the door. Okay. Right. If people are bleeding or something's dying, tell me, but otherwise just leave me alone. Send me an email. I'll call you in a little bit, because they would drop by 3 times a week to visit. And there were times where that was okay. And so I literally I taught my team this: if the door is closed, I'm doing deep work, leave me alone. Unless it's an emergency. If the door is open, you're entitled to come in and interrupt what I'm doing. Cause I'm just doing stuff that, quite frankly, if they come in, it's not the end of the world. It's not a big deal. So it was a matter of being aware of the people, and the D's and C's. I didn't have to go visit. They don't care. You're like, dude, why come visit me? You're interrupting me. I'm over here getting stuff done.
What are you doing here? Yeah. What are you doing here? Get out of here.
The D's will come tell you if they need you. And the C's, if you give them the right information up front, they don't need to interrupt you either. And that's where that's being aware, like for you as a high D, that's being aware that, hey, in the initial process, I need to put in the extra effort to make sure all of those steps are there and all of those decision points are there, so that my C's, they just read that laminated sheet, and they're like, step 1, call company, and they're over there on the phone, because they have the information they need. They don't need to come ask you now because they've got the information up front. But if you're not aware that they need it, you as a leader who's a D is feeling like, man, why do they keep coming and interrupting me and asking me why? I told them what to do, Well, because they need to know that stuff to feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And you prevent the problems down the road by being aware of it up front.
Yeah, that's great, Scott. That is awesome stuff, man. We're going to wrap it up with that, because there's a lot in that. There's a lot in that, man. This has been an awesome interview with you. I'm so glad you're able to get on and share, and a lot of great takeaways in this for everybody. When you guys are dealing with people, I wrote a blog once called Society's Weak Link, People. That was my
problem is they're the problem and the solution.
Right, exactly. And that's exactly what you talk about. Like all you have to do is figure it out. You just gave a ton of examples on how you figure it out and how you can work with that. Now, guess what? It's actually work.
Then you actually have to work at it.
It's the leadership work. It's the job of the leader, okay, and getting that stuff done. Because if you can create, and I'm going to use the word harmony in the workplace that way, and you understand these strengths and weaknesses and these personality traits, you can assign people to the right work.
You give them the right work, you give it to
You
them the
can
right way.
how to do it, yeah, the whole thing. So it like changes your company.
Yep.
And here's another thing that you know, I'm sure you're gonna increase retention.
Absolutely.
People are gonna stay
And that's
because
expensive.
I'm telling you, but when they're valued, because each one of them has a way to feel valued, and you described it with understanding that personality. They have a way, you know, it's like the love languages and
It's
what's
speaking their
affirmation,
language. Yeah.
right? And it's really important. And I tell you what, I sucked at that for like 20 years. I basically would only hire people like me. Okay, like I
Right.
didn't.
And yeah, and that's the other weakness. If you hire people
Yeah.
that are just like you, that's great in some ways and it's terrible in others. Because guess what?
Yeah.
You probably don't need a team full of just you.
I always use the great thing I heard. I go, you know, between a husband and a wife. Well, if we're identical, one of us is not necessary.
One of you is redundant. Exactly.
Okay. So it's like I didn't marry me. Okay, I didn't. Well, yeah, I didn't. I definitely know I didn't marry me. I can tell you that my thing.
Well,
So,
and disc, believe it or not, the opposites attract things is actually true in that too.
Right.
Like high D's tend to attract high S's, which is, you know, it literally the opposite of the.
yeah. Yeah, it's good. A lot of power in this. Really, really good stuff, Scott. This has been just awesome. How can people follow you, get in touch? You know the drill. Like where can they
Absolutely.
go?
So I actually put together a landing page just for your listeners. So if you go over to my website, it's at inspiredstewardship.com and then just put in /spear. It has all of the contact information is there. I've got some free resources. So like on disc and other things that are available there. If this is something that tickled your fancy. Of course, I've got a book out, Inspired Living. There's information about that. And then my podcast. So you can go find that and listen to Richard on my show as well. That's all linked up there. And again, you can find that at inspiredstewardship.com /spear.
Oh, that's awesome. See, here's a man who goes above and beyond. All that stuff taken care makes me feel good because, you know, this is a good thing. He's a man who does what he says. You know, many people don't. I call them AT. They're all talk. Okay. So you're AT, baby. I don't need AT. I need people who do things. So that's good because I'm a D.
Yeah. That's, you want the results. That's right.
So, oh, but Scott, thank you so much for taking the time today, man. Just brought a ton of stuff. And guys, take advantage of this. Follow Scott, get in there, take advantage of it. Go to those links. They'll be in the show notes and everything. So let's do that because we want to continue to improve. As owners, this is the stuff that matters. This is strategic work. This isn't tactical work. This is strategic work that's going to change the operation of your company. Again, increase retention, do all the great things you really need to do as a leader. And you'll see what that's like true leadership. Okay, that's serving others, right? That's making sure we understand how they operate so that we can, you know, and it's just a matter of changing the conversation, right? And how you're speaking to people.
And
stuff,
it's just a skill. Again, it's something you
That's
can learn. It doesn't come natural. You got to learn it. You got to work at it.
That's right. So true. So, all right. With all that being said, that is it. It's a wrap. And we will see everyone on the next STS podcast. And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com, see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now.